It's finishers and 40 years with the same landline telephone. It's the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Why, hello there. My name is Bob Smith, and this is the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Welcome back to the show. I'm in a funky mood, baby. You know what I'm saying? I'm just in one of those moods today that's a little bit acerbic. I just can't get it started. You ever have one of those days? Tonight, as I record these words, I was supposed to do an interview or something like that, and I'm also trying to get an introduction to this show, and I haven't been able to make it work. Nothing's worked. I listen back to it and I go, I don't like the sound quality. I don't like the content. So I started again. This is podcasting for anybody who really cares about what they're doing. I wish I could be one of those guys who just flips on a switch and every belch and fart and laugh and snort and car in the background and noise that you hear just ends up on the thing and they just throw the thing out there and it's all done. There's a few podcasts that are successful that way. But I won't listen to them. I'm telling you right now, it's just the thing with me. I'm such a sound guy, you know. I want the sound to be really good. Well, in any event, I hope the sound of Liam Savage will be good for you guys tonight. He's a wrestling expert from Canada. He's a little younger than I am, but he's got just as much experience watching wrestling. And it's going to be the wrestling podcast about nothing. We're going to talk about anything, everything, you name it. It's going to be one of those oddball shows where anything goes. I like conversations like that. I think this came out great, and I hope you sit back, put your feet up, enjoy it, get a little fun out of life as we talk about old school and current wrestling. I think there's a little more current wrestling on this particular show than I usually do because he's a younger guy, and we're also going to have a few people who are into the current wrestling scene coming up on the show in a couple of future weeks, and mainly because I want somebody to walk me off the ledge. Walk me off the ledge, convince me that I should watch more, convincing me of something. I get very disillusioned with the state of today's product, but what can you do? It's today's product. It's what it is. So in any event, Liam Savage is coming on the show. Count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But wait a second. We have a quick commercial break, and then right up into Canada, we'll go with Liam Savage. Hold on. We'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, Wrestling Fans International Association is back. That's right, the premier fan club association of the 1970s and 1980s has been revived and is back in business. Join today. It's free at thewfia.org. That's thewfia.org. You can also join us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/WFIA 1969.
Liam, my friend, welcome back.
Thank you, Bob. It's good to be back, and it's number 4, I believe.
Yes, this is the 4th appearance. I did just talk about that, and I will say this too. I hope you heard the year-end show because I lavish you with a little bit of praise. I still think you got a big future doing this crap. So, welcome to the wrestling podcast about nothing. We're just going to shoot the breeze. How's that sound?
Sounds good. I likened it earlier to a potpourri episode, like you would see on Jeopardy. You get your different subjects like world politics and baseball teams. Then it'd be potpourri would be the end. So this is potpourri.
Yeah. Well, Jerry Seinfeld got rich doing a show about nothing.
That's right.
That was his whole shtick. So, I heard him say this. He based the format off the old Abbott and Costello show from the late 50s, early 60s.
Did he?
It was a similar show. Those shows didn't have a running theme throughout. It was just different scenes, one after another.
Right.
And he said, it's freeform. I like it. And he actually lists that as an influence on his sitcom.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see where that would come from. Yeah.
I was never a Lou Costello fan. I was a 50-year-old baby. You know, I couldn't get used to that. You know, well,
Yeah.
how bad? All right. So tell our friends who may not have heard your first two appearances where you are in the fantastic country of Canada.
I'm in what they refer to it as the GTA, which is the Greater Toronto Area. So I'm in a suburb of Toronto, about maybe 40 minutes north. About that.
Oh, so you're close to Toronto. Wow. You ever
Yes.
been in the El Macambo?
I actually haven't, and because there's only certain venues that'll play maybe the stuff I'm accustomed to seeing for live music. But yeah, I've heard about the legends, and I know Stevie Ray Vaughan played there and all that. But it's a little dingy club from what I understand.
Oh yeah, there's nothing fancy about it, but
Yeah.
it was the vibe.
Yeah.
I went up there. I went to college at Brockport, and I did go to the El Macambo once. It wasn't too far from Toronto, where the college was.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you, rockin' scene, great musicians, jam night. You know, the normal thing. You know,
Mhm.
and some of the people who played the jam night went on to become famous on their own. So
Yeah.
it was a great music club. Anyway, we digress. So I want to ask you: in Canada, you obviously get all the same wrestling we get here, right?
Yeah.
AEW, WWE,
Yeah.
maybe MLW, maybe Impact. Who could say?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I don't have cable anymore. Haven't for years. But from what I understand, we can get pretty much all of it. Yeah. I don't pay for it though, so.
Okay.
Why would you, right? Why
Well,
would you?
I switched from cable to streaming myself.
Yeah.
The services that stream. I don't need the box. I don't
No.
watch that much television.
Not
Although
me
I just
either.
invested in a brand new big set, but well, the old was getting kind of dog-eared, so
Yeah.
So anyway, my first wrestling related question to you
Yes.
tonight will be the AEW conundrum.
Oh God!
How
long we got? Wait, is this 5 hours?
No. But you have been on. I've seen some of your comments on social media, and you tend to take their side when there's a controversy, or maybe I'm reading it wrong in that you see it as a company. At least it's something else to watch other than WWE. I'm getting that's the vibe from you.
I'm assuming you maybe saw something I posted today. I'm not sure. I posted something today along those lines. Okay, so here's my thing. Now, we all know, I would assume 90% of your listening audience would probably be under the assertion that AEW is probably not our cup of tea.
Get off my lawn.
There you go. So, with having said that, I try not to look at it as negatively as some people. Now, there's a tribalism that goes on. And I noticed the other day, and I won't, not to bury anybody, it was in a forum, let's just say that, a Facebook group, and largely against AEW. And someone posted about, oh, look, the AEW's going in the crapper, and Jacksonville, Tony Khan's team just didn't make the playoffs, and isn't this so funny? And I'm looking at it thinking, like, and I think I said, like, so you're actively rooting for someone to fail and people to lose their jobs, and you think this is funny. Grow up. And everybody thought it was funny that I said that. Oh, that's the funniest thing I've read all week. And I'm thinking, why would you actively want a promotion to fail? A national promotion that's also on a world stage, but nationally. Why would you want them to fail? Even if you don't like it, because God knows how many people would be out of work. It's a viable, maybe not a viable alternative, but it's an alternative to WWE, right? Why would you make a whole point of saying, oh yeah, man, I hope they go under? Like, that's just, I can't understand that. You want that many people to be out of work? And Jerry Lynn, who I know is he's a producer backstage. I don't want to think that he's making more money now than he was making probably quite a few years ago at his old job, and he's doing well for himself. I don't want to think that he's gonna have to start all over doing something else. That's not cool to me. So when I see the tribalism, it really starts to get on my nerves, because everybody just wants to dump, and they're very sheepish in that way.
But there's the alternate point of view as well. especially on Facebook. I mean,
Yes.
there's the anti-WWE crowd that hates everything they do too.
Sure. Yeah.
So it works both ways. But I will say, let me go back to AEW because I want to just express this.
Mhm.
Nobody rooted for the people involved harder than I did when they sold out Madison Square Garden in an hour with the Dusty, good God, Dustin Rhodes versus Cody Rhodes match.
Excellent
Remember
match.
the multifaceted independents all got together and put on a mega show that people will talk about forever. People are going to talk about that show forever. Of course I applauded that. Of course I wanted more of that.
Yeah.
There was right then there was an alternative, a brand new alternative to what we've all been watching. And you know that the hair stood up on Vince McMahon's arms. It had to.
Yeah.
All right. So it looked so promising. And then they debuted. And the first thing I see is a battle royal. No, I see a battle royal with a guy with no legs laying in the ring.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what am I looking at? You know, it reminded me of the debut of Impact or TNA.
Yes.
Where I had high hopes that Jarrett's are back. This is going to be great. And boy, did it suck.
Oh, yeah.
All right. It was bad humor and bad matches and pushing people who shouldn't have been pushed. And it was just strange.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first thing in the first TNA show, if you go way back, they brought out Rick Steamboat with the belt, Harley Race,
Jackie Fargo.
Anybody who had anything to do with it. And I said, this is going to be great. And then the bell rang. You know?
Yeah.
So I get so disappointed with bad booking, bad decisions, gimmicks. At one point in AEW, we saw Jeff Hardy levitating throughout the arena with stop motion photography, and everybody knew what that was. And Tony Schiavone is doing. What are we seeing here? Well, you know what you're seeing here. Don't make us feel stupid. So they have done so much crap and so much moments that shouldn't have been done. And I have other philosophies on it too. Like I think Tony Khan works the guys too hard. He's big friends with them, but they practically kill each other in the ring sometimes. I mean, it's you know what I'm saying? Unsafe moves, dangerous spots all the time. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's overkill. But again, I cannot and will not criticize a younger person for really being into AEW because it's what they have.
It's all a matter of perspective too. Me and you grew up on different things. And you have a basis for 70s wrestling that I don't, and so on and so forth. And maybe I was watching more intently when you were tuning out of it because you weren't doing the magazines anymore and stuff like that. But they grew up with a different thing. All right. So if you remember Harley Race's main thing that people would say against him when he was starting out was that, oh, you're doing something off the top rope. That's crazy. You're going to kill the business and all that. He was an innovator, and nobody looks back at him now with anything more than admiration. So when you look at how it is these days, and the kids watch it and think, oh, a million flippy moves is great. You know what? I was into, I don't know if you remember Michinoku Pro Wrestling, Great Sasuke and Taka Michinoku and all that. I thought that stuff was great when I was, in high school. And then, you see the same type of match over and over. And it's like, let me get something different. I start turning to All Japan. Light years different. And it's a lot of back and forth, but it's very believable. And I think these days, it's more an acrobatic show. And I'm not going to fault someone. If they like it, cool. It's not bothering me, right?
Yeah.
But I have a good example, though, is that I think I've mentioned to you before. I have a friend at work, and he's younger, but he never really grew up in a lot of it, but he's taken some interest in it. So I bring in like hard drives full of matches and stuff. And he said, well, what should we watch now? And I said, okay, I got one for you. I said, there's a famous trilogy. You know where I'm going with this, with Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair. And he said, oh, Ric Flair, he's kind of just like the comedy guy, right? And I said, well, no, I mean, he does a lot of comedic stuff, but if you watch these matches, maybe you'll get a really good appreciation. So he watched the first match and he was like, oh my God, that was great. He watched the second match, he was blown away. And then he watched the third match and he thought that was incredible. And then he sees the whole thing with Terry Funk at the end and he's really drawn in. And I said, do you understand what's happening here? It's not a bunch of flippy. It's telling a story. Oh, he worked on the arm. Okay, the arm's really messed up. Oh, he can't throw someone properly. There's part of the story. And it's very simple, but it's something there. And he understood it. And he goes, yeah, it looks like, that could have been really viable back then. It looks like the crowd's getting excited for a reason, not because they're doing everything under the sun. So when you can show that in a way to someone younger that hasn't had the experience watching stuff that we have, it gives them a bit more of a better perspective to think, you know what, I'm looking at all that other stuff and it's fun and everything, but it's not maybe drawing me in the same way, and it's going to get old very quickly. So
it's funny you mentioned me going back to the 70s. I wrote down something here. Do you think headlocks, arm bars, grapevines are boring? Yeah. And this is the difference. I just wonder, back in my day,
yes,
there was such a thing as time limit draws. Curfew at the end of the show, it would be a curfew draw, and nobody booed.
No,
I think if you did either of those things today, people would riot.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. I'm also the opinion too, though, that these days, if you see a disqualification, and it doesn't really happen in AEW, thank God. That's a great thing about their company. They don't really do disqualifications, but you see that, and the crowd right away, they go, because they already can tell where it's going. Someone comes and rushes the ring, and then, and it's WWE we're talking about, basically.
Yeah.
And that's one of their very negative suits, I guess. But that's the problem, is that when you can start poking holes in it like that, that's where I have a problem.
I am telling you, they had a match on SmackDown, which was a 3-way to determine the next person that Roman Reigns was going to wrestle. I booked it in my head before I even saw it, and I was right.
Of course,
the fact that here comes Reigns and his two guys, and they're gonna beat up the other guys, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah,
it was too predictable.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing. The same friend I was talking about, he wanted to watch was it Triple H against Bret Hart from Raw, and I think it was about a week or two before the Montreal Screwjob. And he said, "Oh, this should be good, right?" And I said, "Yeah, but I haven't seen it in a long time, but I can almost guarantee what's going to happen to the end." He said, "What do you mean?" So, there'll be a Screwjob at the end. Something will happen. Oh, really? Of course, what happens? The Hart Foundation comes down, and then China gets involved, and then Shawn Michaels gets involved, and then, it's a DQ. And I said, this is the way it used to work. A lot of the times when I would watch Raw, I would just almost forego the main event. I would only tune in the last couple of minutes, because I knew either it's going to be a big title match, but the title's not going to change, so why would I bother? Or there's going to be a schmoz at the end, and why bother with that? So I condition myself to think, like, oh yeah, that looks like a great main event, but almost nothing's going to happen. So there you go.
Yeah, I hear you. Here's another thing from my era that they could never do today. You're watching TV. Actually, maybe they would do this now. They're just doing it a different way.
Okay.
It would be the main event. You've watched a bunch of squash matches in the 70s and 80s, and it's the main event. Let's say it's one good guy tag team against a real brutal bad guy tag team, and they're fighting, and one guy's bleeding, and they're punching, and the announcer goes, "Uh-oh, we're running out of time. We'll have to come back next week, fans. This has been champion." And you see them still brawling as the screen goes to black. And I'm thinking, would people accept that now? And then I think they still do it. They still do it once in a while. There'll still be. I remember a recent. I think it was a SmackDown where 8 guys were in the ring punching each other, and they put the little logo in the corner and they went out. So I guess that still happens.
As long as it's not overdone, I don't see a problem with it. It's kind of like a cliffhanger in a TV show, like a dramatic TV show. It's like you kind of want to see where it's going to go next week. But if you start doing that every week, we're going to have a problem. So yeah, if they're kind of brawling at the end and then they don't finish it in time, okay. And then maybe leave that. Oh, we kept rolling after the show ended. Here's what you missed, but they can show it next week. And then just further the story.
You know what they do now? They show it on social media instead.
Well, there's the problem.
Yeah, I think that's a problem too. It's
I don't pay attention to it enough now. where I'm going to be going out of my way to try to find out. And then if you didn't see the thing on social media, oh, well, they're going to expect you watching the show to understand what happened. And you're thinking, well, I don't know what the hell happened. This wasn't on TV. So, it's kind of confusing. So,
yeah. All right. Well, let's take a right turn. Like I said, this is a show about nothing.
Yes.
What's your favorite moment of a live card you ever attended? What's your favorite live card? Was it some big pay-per-view event, a house show? Do you have a favorite that you look back upon with fondness from your whole life of watching wrestling?
As far as see, the thing is, it gets kind of muddled as you get older. Different memories come into different areas, and I don't have a specific show. I just remember maybe certain matches. Like I think I brought up before, seeing Shawn Michaels against Goldust in a ladder match. That was different. Goldust wasn't in the title picture. Excuse me. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is interesting. It's like what I said about the main events on Raw. You knew what was going to happen, but it's an interesting matchup. So I was like, okay, that's all right. But things like that were kind of would stand out. I remember Brian Christopher going against Taka Michinoku on a house show at the Sky Dome. Yes, he used to have house shows at the Sky Dome. Go figure.
No, I believe that. Yeah.
And they would draw, and he actually I think he dropped or he won the title or something, and they kind of did a dusty finish,
Mm-hmm.
So, but that was but stuff like that, you kind of like you can pay attention to a certain time, and if something happened a little bit off the cuff, or when Bret Hart was in his final match in Toronto for WWE before before the screw job, and that was a big deal, and so I got to see him for the second or third time, I think, live, and I remember that in my head. I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be able to see him again, because WCW didn't really come around here. I think they did one pay-per-view here. I didn't go. I was already tuned out by that point. I said, I'm not dealing with that. But not anything massively in particular. It's more about, I think, the memories on TV for me than actual live shows, because I've only been to maybe a handful, and there were some ECW ones I went to in Buffalo. Those were fun. Getting to meet some of the wrestlers backstage, that was fun too. But it's not anything necessarily particularly one moment that defined the live experience for me.
When I wrote this question down for you, I started to think about it for myself, and now I realize, as I'm thinking about it, probably the most enjoyable time I ever had at a live show, I was at the first SummerSlam.
Oh, there you go.
Savage and Hogan against DiBiase and Andre the Giant, which it is what it was. And it's the match where Elizabeth took off part of her skirt and distracted the bad guys, and the good guys won. Bloody-dots. It's when the Ultimate Warrior beat Honky Tonk Man. But I was in there for work with Bill Apter, and here I am, fourth row, ringside, seeing the WWF at its hottest point, probably one of its hottest points.
Yes.
And then afterwards, I met Hulk Hogan and half the WWE people. I never met Hogan before that. I met him later when I worked for WCW. But I just look back at that with such fondness. It was colorful. There were other good undercard matches, of which none of which I can remember. I just remember thinking what fun I had.
Yeah.
And I think that's number one. Number two is the Royal Rumble where Flair won the belt in Albany, New York, and I'm from that area originally.
Right.
So I got to see my family and then go down the road and watch, at the Knickerbocker Arena. And that was a very new arena at that point. And that's a nice cross of family and wrestling all at one. And the fact that Hogan got booed at the end of that match was for brawling with Sid Vicious.
Yeah.
And Flair dumped them both over and won the belt. And he was cheered wildly. Now, he's supposed to be a heel, but he got cheered. That was always Flair, though.
Well, that was the fans starting to turn on the idea of Hulkamania at the time, right? I mean, it was starting to sour.
It got wrote. You can only go back to that well so many times.
Yeah, it gone past the sell by date. So they and then they change the audio these days to when
they sweetened it. Yeah,
when Hogan got dumped out by Sid. and the fans were cheering at the time. And then nowadays, boo. And I'm thinking, no, that's not the way it happened.
That's not the way it happened. No, I remember being at the card, and then the weekend shows came on, and they showed the replay, and I hear nothing. Where I was there, and it was cascading boos for Hogan.
Yeah,
they did that all the time back then.
Oh,
They
yeah.
probably still do to an extent.
Oh, they do.
I wonder if there's any truth to the rumor that they pump fake crowd noise into the TV shows.
Oh, you can't tell?
No.
Oh my God. Okay, so what I noticed, and they'd done it throughout history. You can tell, obviously, with certain things, but it was very sparingly. It would only be used just to kind of manipulate the crowd to think something that's actually happening. But these days, I think it was because of the pandemic, and this is one of the things that kills me, because if that hadn't happened, the way they would do it, because they'd have to have on those pandemic shows, which I barely watched any of them because they were just god awful to watch. I can't watch it without a crowd. And you hear this murmuring like underneath the match, just like that. And it's like you can tell they're just inserting the noise in. So you carry that over to when they finally went back live, and you can tell right away. You can tell it's like there's just this undercurrent of noise. Meanwhile, there are some wrestling shows where the match isn't good in the ring and everybody's dead and you can't hear a damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
So right there you can tell there's this little underlying thing. But that's where it starts to screw people up, because people are saying with like Dominic Mysterio, I guess his whole thing is when he talks, the crowd just boos. Yeah. And a lot of people think they're sweetening it. So a lot of people say, oh no, I was at the show, they were booing the crap out of him. You say, oh, okay. But it's for me, it's like I'm trying to figure out where's the actual natural reaction. When CM Punk came back, you could tell that's
legit.
You could tell the crowd was like just
absolutely
on fire. That's one of the top ones I've ever heard in my life. So.
Me too, and even I was kind of psyched. I don't really care that he came back on a personal level, but just seeing the excitement surrounding it, I got caught up in it too. I thought it was a great moment to watch.
I actually do care.
Okay, all right, okay.
No, I mean, when I wasn't watching it, when I was just kind of tuning in and out, back when he was world champion in WWE, it was him that drew me in, because I'd always heard about him in the Independents and Ring of Honor and all that. And when I saw him, I thought, this guy's different. Like, he's not like the best wrestler I've ever seen, but he's got all the elements to make a great performer, because he can go in the ring, but when he's off talking on the mic or trying to put together a story or really trying to get heat, man, the guy he's got a gift. Mm-hmm. And when you hear that, when I'm hearing stuff like that, and I'm thinking, like, I'm not getting my intelligence insulted. This guy, he's just doing just enough just to please them, probably, but really trying to up the ante. And I'm thinking, man, this guy's sharp. So when he left, I understood, because he just kept getting crapped on by the company and just taken advantage of. When he comes back, I'm thinking, that's great. But I knew right away, because he's very outspoken and he defends himself, that it's not going to go very well. We know what happened in AEW. And we see him come back now, and yeah, he's probably got to play by the rules quite a bit, but he looks very happy. And I think it's a different thing now, where Vince McMahon isn't running the show anymore. Triple H has actually matured quite a bit, and so is Punk, and that's a good marriage. You get those egos calmed down, get them together. That's good TV for me.
CM Punk is the new Bruno Sammartino. Not in wrestling style, not in championship reigns.
Yes.
He's the new Bruno in that people believed in what Bruno said. Mm-hmm. People also believe in what CM Punk says.
That's actually a very good comparison. I never thought about that, but it's...
Neither did I. It just popped into my head, but I was thinking about what you were saying, and people from the first pipe bomb to today, I think he struck a nerve with fans that, you know what, he thinks like we do.
Yes.
He cares about the integrity of things the way we do. And I think people love him for that. It's the same with Bruno. Even in the kayfabe days, Bruno would do, oh, look at that guy with the German. That's ridiculous. He would say during his, look at him. He's got the swastika. He shouldn't have that. That's awful.
Right.
Or whatever the heck. Waldo Von Erich was doing at that point.
Yeah.
That's terrible. He shouldn't be allowed to do this. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And that's what the fans were thinking.
Yeah, and it kind of no, but that's a really good comparison because I never really thought about that until you said it, and it's true because he didn't like to he would wear his emotions on his sleeve, but not to the point where it got out of hand. Punk probably goes overboard on that sometimes, but Bruno, you knew where he was coming from, you knew he's being legit, and you knew he was a man of his word. And he would do that not only in the ring or when he's talking about an upcoming match, but outside of the ring because he would stay true to what he thought. And he was always like that. That's why I respected him so much. I wasn't the biggest fan of his in-ring work because he wasn't like, a super incredible wrestler, but he was, He was more, I think, about the stature. But he, to me, he's someone that you could really respect because he said exactly what he thought. And he was like, well, yeah, you can pay me a lot of money, but I'm not going to do what you want me to do just because I can bend my own ideals.
The skill sets of wrestlers were different in that era.
Sure.
I mean, you had villains, their whole careers were punch and kick.
Oh, yeah.
And body slam. If they were big guys. That was basically it. Killer Kowalski wasn't an acrobatic star. No. All the villains. I mean, it was punch and kick. What got them over as heels is that they punched and kicked. It wasn't like the fan favorite or a scientific wrestler who would put an armbar on you or a headlock or holds. The bad guys didn't use holds. They just beat you up.
Right.
That's why people hated him. It was that simple.
Yeah, it's because the rule breakers.
Add that to a guy with a good gift of gab. You could have a hybrid like Nick Bockwinkel. A scientific wrestler with an intelligent way of doing interviews that nobody to this day has ever come close to doing.
He's still underrated to this day. Like he never gets talked about in the Great World Champions, and I can't understand. I think it's just because, and it's weird because AWA was at one point.
Yes, it was
probably the biggest wrestling promotion in
to everybody else. Everybody else.
And then, but even by that token, you still like in the 70s and all that. Yeah, they were drawing huge houses and they were very popular. But Bockwinkel was never talked about in the same league as Flair or Sammartino.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I was with the magazines. Maybe it was different for me because I hung around with wrestlers and wrestling people. But no, Nick was it. He was it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And talk about knowing psychology. Talk about a guy who should have been a booker.
Oh, yeah.
He should have been a booker. Although they made him a figurehead. I don't know if you remember this. He was once president of WCW. Or commissioner or something.
Commissioner, yeah.
And he goes over because he had that authoritative way about him.
And I think the drag on a lot of that people would say back then was, and I heard this on a podcast recently, someone saying, well, yeah, he was commissioner in WCW, but a lot of people didn't know who he was. And I'm thinking to myself, like, maybe if you're just watching the TV show and you're just in the Atlanta region or something, you might not have known, but you probably had an idea of who he was.
Yeah.
But when you're still kind of looking at everything regionally, like Midwest, Minnesota, all that, Winnipeg, whatever, a huge star over there. But when you start gravitating towards the eastern part of the country, maybe not so much.
You make a good point. I cannot tell you the number of superstar wrestlers from the 80s to today that come into the WWE and nobody knows who they are. Going back to Harley Race coming in.
Yeah.
They had to reintroduce him as a character because nobody knew who the heck he's true. Nobody knew who he was.
You're right.
Who recently? Nick Aldis.
Yeah.
Here's our new commissioner or whatever of SmackDown, Nick Aldis, and crickets.
Yeah.
Nobody knew who Nick Aldis was.
Which is
great choice,
shame.
but who watched the NWA?
I did.
I did too. And
for the first bit, and then I went to crap. But
gosh, after the pandemic, I just don't understand. I don't understand. I was rooting for that promotion so hard. It was so good.
Do you know what was great about that? About Power? It was. I remember and it's just simple stuff, but Tim Storm and Nick Aldis,
right when he first came on, right? Just
great stuff.
Fantastic.
And it wasn't like over the top flashy, but there was a great story there, and it's like, I can never challenge for the title again, and then you get Camille thrown into the mix. It was great. It was very simple, but it was very interesting to me to watch, and I really felt, emotional towards Tim Storm, because he was very, he's kind of like the everyman, and he's, he has this great backstory. He's in his 50s, and he's still holding the world title, and all. It was a really great story, and Nick Aldis is like the new young guy that's coming in to take his spot, and it was a really good story, but it was very basic, but it was very old school, and I really appreciated that.
Me too. And where did it go?
Well,
here's the thing. I understand the pandemic came along and people got contracts elsewhere. A lot of them did, just like that. I don't know if others expired. I don't know. It's none of my. I don't follow it.
Yeah.
But when they came back, it was a shell of what it was, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse. It's almost like, hey, can you wrestle? You want to do Thursday night? You know what I mean? It's like, it reminds me of the old AWA where whoever showed up is who was on the TV show.
Yeah, pretty much.
At the end of the ESPN run, they just would use whoever would be between contracts at that point.
Yeah.
Like you see Adrian Adonis or Nikita Koloff on the very last shows. In fact, I think the last championship match they ever showed was Harley Race against Larry Zbyszko.
Yeah, I actually saw that a few weeks ago, and obviously Harley wasn't in the, he was obviously almost done in ring.
Post surgery, he had abdominal surgery, and he was really, he knew he was pretty much.
He's wearing the singlet and all that. It was a bit different, but I'm looking at it going like, and you didn't have many fans there and whatever, but it's still interesting. It was still interesting to me. It wasn't great. You could tell they were just hanging on by a thread. And, but.
Well, they brought guys in from Central States. The slow bleeding death of the AWA is one of the saddest things to watch. The very last TV shows they did, where they did that stuff in the studio, the Team Challenge series, just closed the doors, guys. I mean, it was just.
I remember watching it when I was still kind of in my formative wrestling years, and I saw, because we got I guess a lot of the ESPN programming we would get on TSN, because we don't have ESPN here. And they'd have the AWA show on there, and I'd only see it every now and then, but they had, is it Wayne Bloom and Mike Enos?
Right.
But they were the Destruction Crew.
Right.
Coming out in hard hats and stuff. And I'm looking at it going like, and it's weird for a kid, because you're watching you're watching WWF, the Mecca, as far as TV and every production goes, and then you're watching the Destruction Crew on AWA, and it's like, but not the best appearance.
Here's the thing that always got me. When they first debuted on ESPN, sure, it wasn't WWF production values, but they had Bockwinkel, Gagne, Zbyszko, Greg Gagne, the original Midnight Express. They had, I said Zbyszko, right? Larry Zbyszko. Yeah. They had all the usual regulars from the AWA, all the
Buddy Rose, Doug Summers.
Doug Summers, the Midnight Rocker, one of the great TV matches of all time in my mind. If you ever saw it, it's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Worst, and you'd see the Observer, worst TV show, AWA Championship Wrestling. I'm like, do you want to see Matilda the Bulldog and Droop the Dumpster Drosy, or do you want to see the Midnight Rockers against Rose and Summers?
Yeah,
it always got my goat. It really did.
Yeah, even as a kid, I'm watching. Like you bring up Matilda, Islanders,
Matilda the Bulldog. Yeah,
the Islanders stole the British Bulldogs mascot, and then they had a thing where Bobby Heenan was pulling it around, but there's just a leash and there's no dog, and they're trying to psych them. And I'm just thinking, even as a kid, I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
And but you kind of had to take the whole program, I guess, if you're gonna, noon on Saturday, Superstars of Wrestling every week on Fox, and I'd watch it, and you'd have to sit through some crap sometimes, but you'd always hope the Hogan would be on, but he was never usually on.
Right.
But,
at that point, right.
Yeah, but you'd sit through some of the crap to get to the stuff you actually wanted to see, and that's the way that worked.
But you know what? I find those shows, 88, 86, very hard to watch now.
Oh God!
They were noisy and shrill, and McMahon laughing at every feeble joke, and
Yeah.
Oh, that's not right, McMahon. Even Jesse started to grate on my nerves. I love Jesse,
Oh yeah.
but he started to grate on my nerves. It got so rote. It got so samey all the time.
It's nostalgic for me, but I guess just because I was a kid. But when you look back at it very constructively, it's way too over the top. And then you look at what JCP was doing at the time, and it's just like night and day. Just night and day. And
well, JCP stood stuck by its guns. They should have never tried to imitate the WWF. Continue on with the hard-hitting Southern flavor. Look at their roster: Flair and Wyndham and Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard,
nuts.
and go down the list. Nikita Koloff and Lex Luger, and just go down the list. And you go, "Wow, what a great roster!"
Mm-hmm.
And people didn't think that back then. Are you kidding me?
I remember, I think I've said to you before. I remember that being different to me because when I could catch the TBS show, I remember it being kind of gritty. And it didn't look, and it's not in my AWA comparison where you could watch the show and just oh, that doesn't look like the best produced show or whatever. This was different to me because they'd have the the set where David Crockett and Tony Schiavone be interviewing, and you remember that little thing with the desk, and then you remember it was in a studio, but it was gritty, and the people were connecting more with their punches, quote unquote. Just the moves looked a bit more destructive than other moves on WWF.
One of the great not oxymorons, excuse me, but one of the great changes in modern wrestling is that you could have a studio show that would produce a full arena.
Yes.
Imagine that. That could not happen today, I don't think.
No. Memphis is a perfect example of that.
Right. They did it for 30 years or whatever it was. Crazy.
Sell out the Mid-South Coliseum all the time, right?
Yeah. Even when they were healthy crowds, And listen, for what they were paying the talent to draw 8,000, they made oodles of money doing it. So it was you know what I'm saying? So it was God, I'm getting nostalgic just sitting here. Remember the old days? No, I'm thinking of my trip to Memphis. I always talk about it way too much, but I had such a wonderful time that it was Let's talk about women's wrestling and the fact that it is... I've been told I'm wrong 1,000 times talking to just people that I thought that at least in WWE, women's wrestling is even with the men. Other people don't agree with that. I think it's presented on an even you do see shows end with women's matches now.
I try to take a kind of a middle of the road type of thought with a lot of things, and I do it with this too. There are some excellent women's wrestlers, and there's some god awful ones, and it's the same with the men.
Right.
The fact that Charlotte Flair just went out for about 9 months is just gutting me because she's one of my favorites of any gender. I don't care, and she's excellent. She has it just perfect, no problems. And there's other women's wrestlers that and AEW is kind of their division is not justified. I don't think it's justified enough to have 2 belts and as many minutes on the shows they get. But that's just me as a fan saying that.
Mm-hmm.
As far as WWE goes, we know the women's tag division's a little subpar, and but there are some great wrestlers there. Natalie, Natty Neidhart, you can't argue with how great she is. She's a living legend. Charlotte Flair, you got Bianca Belair, who's very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Rhea Ripley, obviously, we don't need to even talk about her because she's excellent. She gets it.
She's rewriting the book, I'm telling you.
Sure, but then you have others that I always remember seeing when I would watch NXT, because that was about the last good thing consistently that I can remember watching before the pandemic, and it was great every week. Was some of them were still getting their legs under them, and I remember Liv Morgan when she was, because you remember, or you see her nowadays, and she's been a champion and all that, but still don't think she's very good. But when she was in NXT, I remember watching her come out, and the crowd would be sympathetic just because it would be kind of botched move after botched move, and you'd be watching it, and you're thinking, I feel bad for her, and it's developmental, but it's on TV, and you can tell this is not the best thing. And some of them, it doesn't look like they've maybe latched on to, like the light bulb moment, like how others have. But it's like I said, it's the same with some men. There's some men on the roster, it doesn't look like they're going to ever get it either. But I think the women's division is obviously healthier in WWE, but with a loss of someone like Charlotte Flair, that's a huge problem. But we can only hope that Jade Cargill is getting trained properly now and will be a megastar that we all think she will be. She will be the next Charlotte if everything goes accordingly.
Right. Oh, I like them. I like the WWE Women's Division. I think there's some names there that you didn't bring up that I get Becky Lynch.
Sure, yeah. There's a lot of left off, but yeah.
And you know who I'm rooting for in AEW? Not that this will mean anything, but I just am fond of Chris Statlander because she's a Long Islander, and I watched her in one of her first matches right around here. Mm-hmm. And I thought she had potential even then, and now she's kind of living up to it. But will they use her right? That's the question. It's like I say, the women's division in AEW is kind of like grabbing for smoke. I can't figure out what they're doing with it.
Yeah, I didn't think. I heard a lot of people praising her immediately, and like my former co-host, he'd be praising her all the time. And I'm kind of looking at him like, I didn't see it back then. She's starting to get it.
Yeah,
I'm not saying she's going, never accelerating, but I just didn't see it then.
She was boxed in by here's the problem with AEW. They bring people they put people on TBS and TNT with their small indie characters. Yeah. Don't do that. She was a space alien for a while.
Yeah.
Boop, boop.
Yeah.
Please. I mean, you don't do that. If there's, you just don't do it. I
like realism in wrestling. I like realism.
Yeah.
Call me a weirdo. But
oh no, you're kind of old school, new school, I guess.
No, I mean, I like realism. I don't like to think that like someone's from some mystical galaxy or whatever. Like even they do some they do some of that stuff nowadays. Like what's the House of Black or something, and they're all like mystical guys. And I'm okay.
You know who I can't stand only because the character is bad. I think they're both have the potential to be good, but Karrion Kross and Scarlett make no sense to me. He's always seething. He's always got this daggers in his eyes and gritting his teeth. Why? It's never explained why.
Now, did you see what they did with them?
Yeah, they brought in Paul Ellering.
Yeah, and the Authors of Pain, who I actually really liked when they were in NXT. Really good tag team, super heavyweights, very good.
I did see that, but
a lot of people.
I just think he's a really bad actor.
Yeah,
he's not a little bad or kind of bad. He's awful, and I'm not talking about his ring work. His acting, the steely-eyed leer that he has is so acting.
It's a bit too intense.
Yeah.
And Scarlett, I mean, she's eye candy, I guess. But
listen, there's been a million valets, so I don't really care.
Yeah. But I mean, just how she's like kind of, I'm mystical and all that.
Yeah, what does that even mean? Okay. I guess they're tarot card readers or something. It's never been explained.
Yeah.
At least since they were on NXT, right?
Yes.
So they came up and they never explained anything about, it's Karrion Kross, and the screen changed to black and white. Ooh, I'm scared.
Well, even when they got
made no sense to me at all.
Yeah, even when they got released and then they came back, and I remember, and it was apparently a very bad crowd that night anyways, but I remember when he came back and he did a run-in at the end of the show or something, and some people kind of looked up in their chair and okay, whatever. And it's like they didn't even remember him. And I'm thinking this guy's a legit wrestler, and they're thinking like, I don't know who this is. What do I care? And then just kind of sit back down in their seat.
So I'll play devil's advocate about him. As much as I can't stand him now, I say if you rework what he does, he might be good.
That's what they're trying, right?
Rework the whole thing from soup to nuts.
Yeah, and that's great. That's great.
She even showed up as a brunette the other night, so anything is possible.
Okay, so I mean, you got Paul Ellering there. That's not a bad thing because he could have a very good influence on them backstage. As far as here's what you could do here.
Were you shocked?
I wasn't shocked, but I remember he was with the AOP team, and when they brought him up to the main roster, he came out for the first match with them, and then they sent him to the back, and they stopped having him as a manager. I thought, oh, that's weird. I think because he probably wasn't like as keen as going on the road anymore. I think that was part of it, but I'm happy to see him there. This guy's a legend, right? So I mean, there's nothing wrong with having him there, and it's just going to be great influence as far as taking maybe an old school mindset. And I know Karrion Kross is of that old school mindset in a lot of ways, just based on how he wrestles. He takes like one of his main moves is a Saito suplex, from Masa Saito.
Right.
Great stuff, right? And so you can incorporate that. You can incorporate those two super heavyweights. You got Paul Ellering there. I mean, there's a lot of people online. I've been seeing all the comments, and people are saying, "Man, don't screw this up. Don't screw this up."
Yeah, this has got to be his last chance. But I think if you make him a little less intense, he'll be fine. Every interview he ever gave, his eyes are bulging and he's getting the veins are out in his neck, and for no reason. He would remember the Rey Mysterio feud. There was no reason for that feud to start. It made no sense.
No, I think if anything, I would go for a more methodical approach.
Right.
Just bring it down a level. Do it maybe like a Jake Roberts type thing, where he's not screaming his head off. He's just drawing you in, speaking softly, drawing you in, and there's a method to his madness. Do that. I don't want to see someone over the top.
But this is the same organization that hosts the Viking Raiders, so
that I'm not a fan of.
No, who is? And they're not bad.
Not many.
The problem is that the gimmick will never get over.
That was actually funny. Now that you mention that, because they were in, I think, Ring of Honor. I didn't see them then. They were in Ring of Honor and they were in New Japan, and they were called War Machine.
Right.
And I remember I saw them a couple times on a couple of New Japan shows, and I was like, "Oh, these guys wow, look at them." And then they come to NXT, and they were being rumored. So they came on one of the takeover shows, and so the crowd's going nuts. War Machine. And then they show the thing. I forget what their name was. Oh, it was like the War Raiders. So that comes up on the Titantron, and you just hear the crowd go, "Oh." Just kind of like the air deflated out of the room. And they were pushed well and everything, but then they come up to the main roster, and they had the whole Viking Experience debacle that, they had to rework that.
I don't get why they did it with those two, because I'm trying to think of anybody that broad on the whole roster right now. It's almost like they're out of the 80s.
It's cartoony.
Yeah.
You got we have our Valhalla. Are you kidding me? That is stupid. That's like something a 5-year-old would come up with. Give me a break. I remember seeing that, and I thought, oh my God, it's so cartoony. I can't deal with this.
Paul Bearer. I mean, come on.
That's stupid too.
Right.
That's very stupid.
Listen, he played his part well, but it was really stupid.
Yes.
In fact,
it was over the top. Yeah.
I am see, this is why I'm probably going to be the most despised, one of the most despised pundits in wrestling, because I always felt that The Undertaker did more damage to professional wrestling than anybody else I can think of. Not because he wasn't good, but it's the first character who came right out and said, "Boy, is this fake. What you're seeing is definitely not real. It couldn't be real."
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is we look back at that character with rose-colored glasses in a lot of ways.
Right, because he had some of the lamest angles on the way to becoming the American badass you'd ever want to see.
But the problem with him was, it's a stupid thing. It's a dead man that comes, and he'll just sit up and no sell whatever big move, and he's not living, and then here's it, and it's a pallbearer, but his name's Paul Bearer.
Right,
get it? It's stupid.
Oh, he gets power from the urn. What?
Yes.
Who?
No, I never understood that. And I thought,
I'm telling you, it was so blatantly over the top. This is just a show.
Yeah.
Now, Mark is a fantastic wrestler.
Oh yeah.
And a great in the ring.
Yeah.
Who managed to supersede all that. When they turned him into the American Badass, nobody was cheering harder than I was. Because they shrugged off all that other stuff. He came right in on a motorcycle and beat people up. I'm like, this is good.
There you go.
It was the same wrestler without all that packaging.
But then everybody missed the old characters, so they brought him back as that, and so on and so forth. And that's all cool and everything, but I mean, And yeah, it was a lot more realistic, but I think by that time he'd already been established as this character, as stupid as it was, but people just accepted it because the whole package was there, and the entrance is great. Like all the theatrical kind of stuff is really cool to look at, but I remember when he came down in MSG, and he came down as like almost like a bat Undertaker, like when he was going against Mankind on Survivor Series, I think it was, and he came down with like these bat wings almost, and I thought, okay, now we're really just trying to grasp, and they need to have a teardrop tattoo, and
There was the one match where it was a casket match that he lost, and you look up at the scoreboard and you see this figure rising like he's going to heaven and stuff like that. And you saw his face, I will not rest in peace.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just
come on.
Ugh.
It was that.
Dreadful. Dreadful. Yeah. I'm sorry. There's a lot of fans who loved every little thing he's ever done, which is great. Enjoy it. With me, I that's part of the reason when I left PWI, I was like, okay. I was working for Sandy Krebs. I was working for Sandy Krebs when the match I just described was on. And I went, this stuff's getting hard to cover, Sandy. You went, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I really was starting to lose interest. I thought it was getting so stupid that leaving it at that time was not the worst idea I ever had. So,
well, that was also the worst time for the North American side of the industry.
Yeah, all the territories were drying up one by one.
Yeah.
Memphis was probably the last. Even Smoky Mountain went out. I mean, when I was still with PWI, you had Smoky Mountain and Memphis and Continental and Calgary and go on down the list, and one by one, pop. It was like taking a magic marker and drawing an X over a city. Just one after another, they all started to dry up.
It's weird too because the North American scene was really dying, but then you went to the other side of the world, and Japan was thriving, and Germany even was having a lot of the future stars would do the carnival tours and all that stuff, and it was getting very interesting for that side of the world. But over here, it was near death. And you couldn't watch any of these shows without going, oh my God,
Yeah.
But you look in Japan, and for instance, and the foundation for a lot of the big, massive, legendary stars that are out today started in that kind of early 90s era. And it sowed the seeds for something that would be much bigger later on. But, this side of the world, it was like near death.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It was fascinating in around 91, 92 to watch Vince McMahon panic. Because business was down, and they had the steroid scandals. So what they were presenting on TV was pure dreck. I mean, they had a Papa Shango and his voodoo spells, and they had Nails beating the living tar out of Big Boss Man for like 10 minutes on a show that aired on Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock in most markets. And he was desperate. He didn't know which way to go at that point. And he's had several things during the pandemic. The burning alive of Bray Wyatt. That had Vince's hand all over it, that thing.
Oh, yeah.
So when he got desperate, it's when his product was at its absolute worst.
Yeah, and it just looked like, like the creative well had dried up more so than the terrible stuff. Some of the terrible stuff in the 80s was bad, but at least there was other stuff that balanced it out. And then when you get to the 90s, man, I felt bad for people like Bret Hart. And Shawn Michaels and all that, because like they were the big stars and they were excellent, but like they were being force-fed with all this other crap, to put it mildly. And nobody's fault in that sense. It's creative, but it's still like, oh my God, like imagine if you could have weeded out all that crap and had them going against legit people that you would really be interested in. That'd be great, but it was very few and far between then when they had the matches that anybody really cared about.
That whole Attitude Era.
I hate it.
Yeah, I know. You and you know what? I'm starting to look that way too, because I went back and browsed some old shows and went, man, disjointed mess.
Oh.
Was that Russo?
Yeah, that's when he was getting a lot of power.
Yeah. It's just, nobody talks about the Attitude Era with that much fun. It's getting less and less. People were less and less romantic about it. Some people loved it.
Yeah, it was what killed me. I told you before that when I started to see this, the tide was starting to turn as far as creative. 97, I think, was a great year. and maybe I'm biased because I'm a huge Bret Hart mark, but I guess then everything was starting to like get put into place. Things were getting a little bit better. There was the ECW invasion, all that stuff. Everything was starting to get really interesting. And then once the screw job happened, I found my interest declining a little bit each week. And then by the time I got to WrestleMania 14, I thought, okay, I think I'm done. And I just stuck with ECW until they died. And then I kind of tuned out in general because just the way that everything was so blatant, like all the sexual humor is just so blatant. It's just out there. It's like, I'm not a kid.
Right.
I'm not a little kid. I'm now entering my 20s and I don't want to see this crap.
Well, I think that's even led into today's. So much of
Sure.
WWE is marketed toward high school, college.
Yeah.
Or even, junior high to college, that type of thing. You could tell from the advertisers to the content, they're looking for the youth market all the time. Go buy your championship belts for $300 a piece or whatever the heck they are. Yeah. Yep. So, and sale right now on WWE.com for T-shirts. You notice it's not going to be a full-grown adult that's buying that stuff. It's kids.
Yeah.
And now they sell the kids in an entirely different way, but in a way, it's still the ice cream bar era.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true though, but it's very smart business on there, and even before the takeover from the TKO takeover, they were very smart as far as marketing. I remember Conrad Thompson was going on about this, saying his daughter was watching. Is it Naomi? Is that her name in the rest? I think she's Trinity now or something.
Yeah, Naomi.
Yeah, she was the women's champion on one of the brands, and she had the light up belt. And he's looking at it saying, that is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And then his daughter is going like, Dad, I really want that. I really want that. And then it just clicked for him. He said, oh, okay, I get it. It may look stupid to us, but man, you're going to make a ton of money if you can sell enough of those belts that light up and stuff. Same thing with John Cena and the spinner belt. There's levels to this where you really dig deep and you go, I got it. You're going to make a ton of money on this. May not be all for us, but it's business, right?
Okay, here's a confession. Here's a confession.
Oh.
I was such a mark for the Funkadelics. And that whole bit with the two big burly guy. Here comes Tyrus and what was his name? What was the other guy?
Brodus Clay, I think it was.
No, that Brodus Clay was his old name, but the other guy, Albert.
Oh.
Albert.
Oh, yeah.
Here they come. Neither of them can dance a lick, and they are sashaying down the aisle, and here come the Funkadelics bumping butts. Funk is all around. Oh, please. 10 times out of 10. It was so bad, it was fantastic.
Now, did you have the same impression of when Too Cold Scorpio came out as Flash Funk and had the Funkettes? Because that was terrible.
I don't even remember that.
Oh, my God. I remember getting very excited to see Too Cold Scorpio on a big stage again.
Yeah.
And then he comes out dressed like a pimp with a fedora on, and he has these two girls on each arm like dancing, and it was just like half the time of him coming out to the ring is him dancing, does a quick match, and then he goes back and he's dancing again. I'm like, what is this crap?
But here's the thing. Going back to the Funkadelics. There is nothing better in this planet as an entertainment thing. Ask Mel Brooks than bad dancing.
Oh yeah.
If you noticed that in every Mel Brooks hit, there was a bad dancing scene, like the cowboys around the campfire and going to run all night, and these people pushing around in a feeble attempts to dance. There is nothing funnier than bad dancing. So when Albert and Tyrus are coming down that aisle, shaking their butts, I'm like, sold. You got me, baby.
It's like Elaine on Seinfeld, right?
Yeah.
Everybody remembers how bad she danced on that. That was the joke. Again,
right? I'm ashamed to admit I enjoyed that, but I'm fessing it up for the whole world to hear right now because it's fine. Like I got laugh every time they did an entrance. I'd shut the match off, but I enjoyed the entrance.
Yeah, you feel kind of guilty sometimes about that, but like I remember what's her name, Lana. It was at Rusev's valet, and when she started wrestling, every week she got put through a table, and it was this running gag where like, it was like 10 weeks in a row she got put through a table. And I'm just like, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, this is so stupid, but I just kept laughing because I'm like, it's just so funny. It's predictable, but it was hilarious. It was like, no, you're going through a table again. Oh my God, give me a break. Funny though.
Isn't it something? You're right. It's something when you're enjoying something that your head says not to enjoy, but you enjoy it anyway. Yeah. That's wrestling. You know, that's all, that was like, listen, I one of the funniest things that I find about old school wrestling, 70s style, was the ring announcers who couldn't pronounce the wrestlers' names always thrilled me. They always had a wrestling announcer, and when you went to any card in the 70s, it was an old man in an ill-fitting suit.
Yeah.
Mispronouncing everybody, every foreigner's name, everything else.
Yep.
That was wrestling back then.
Yeah. They still did it at some of the independent shows around here too. It was pretty sad, but
yeah,
whatever.
Hey,
I'm not going to complain.
Well, look, we said we were going to talk about nothing, and we talked about nothing for an hour now. Do you realize that?
Yeah, I'm kind of concerned now.
No, what are you concerned about?
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
It's just
now. Let me
funny.
ask you one more question before I let you loose and back into the wilds of Canada.
Back into the wilds.
Let me ask you this: Are you? I hope you, on occasion, listen to this podcast. I would hope.
I listen every week.
Okay.
I've listened to every episode.
What other podcasts do you enjoy? Because I have a handful of them that I can't say no to, and I listen to more than I should because I end up being guests on other people's show, and then I get hooked on those shows. So what are you into? What do you like?
Okay, there's one that I will plug right now that I would love everybody to listen to. He is the longest running wrestling podcaster in history, but not everybody talks about it. It's called the Don Tony Show.
Oh yeah, he's doing fine. Yeah,
he is the original, and he was doing Hotlines in '97. That's how far back he goes, and he continued it to start doing audio shows, and then which became podcasts. He's doing it before Cole Cabana, anybody else, and this guy is special because when everybody else is looking for clickbait, he does his research, reaches out to people, and actually gets the full story and will report it as that on his podcast. And he says, yeah, I don't want to be first, I want to be right. So he does that, and he has some good takes on a lot of stuff, and he's very fair, but what always draws me to him is, like, if I hear about a story that's happening, he's going to make a point of trying to debunk it, to say, like, oh, everybody's saying this online, here's what really happened, because he does his research. That's one that everybody should be listening to if they really enjoy wrestling.
Nice.
Don Tony. Yeah.
So, but this is the wrestling podcast about nothing, ladies and gentlemen. You've listened to 1 hour of us rambling about everything and anything. And I think it was pretty good. What do you think?
I think it was pretty good.
Did you enjoy yourself?
I'd agree. Of course, I always do.
That's the idea. That's
what we do, Bob.
We want people to enjoy themselves. Right? Yeah.
It's enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, I also think you have a future, my young friend. I do believe that whatever you don't see it yet, but I think you're going to wind up doing something wrestling related that's going to be really important. And I
hope so.
You're going to figure it out soon. I'm telling you.
I just need to get the commitment factor down, and
you mean self-commitment type of thing?
Well, yeah. I mean, every time I get the itch to start something like this, I get so disappointed with the industry, and then something will bring me back, and then I kind of get disappointed again, and you know, and I've said before, it's like I don't do anything half-assed. I use my whole ass, Bob. So I gotta use my whole ass for it. So right. It would be something I would very much be into, doing something again. Maybe it's like a co-host type of deal or something like that. I would be interested in it. I don't know if I necessarily want to do everything myself. I'm a pretty busy guy as it is in my normal life. So,
you just brought up a good point. When I decided to strike out on my own, January 1 year ago, right now, when I started to do this on my own, I said, before I say a word into a microphone, I'm going to research about sound quality, about editing, about placement, about monetization, anything that can make your podcast work and get the word out there. I figured I had sort of what they refer to in the TV industry as or radio industry as an authority voice. You know, somebody who's been there, so you can kind of trust what they say, that type of thing. I hope that's the case. So before I turned my mic on for the first time, I was ready to go. I did not expect, however, how much time this takes if you do it right. This takes a lot of time. I am telling you, this is almost like I'm still working full-time in sports media, as you know. You can see the background here, all the sports books and everything like that. But it's like this takes a lot of time. One show takes me about 6 hours of work. And that's after the interview's been done.
Yeah.
So I think that it's worth it. This is a good show. I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm doing this for me, first and foremost. I'm just so happy that people like you are listening, and a lot of people in the industry are listening, and I'm really thrilled with the way things are going. It's exceeded my expectations 50 times over, man. I'm having a blast. So I'm just warning you, if you do decide to strike out on your own, be prepared to do some work.
I did, like I said before, I did some production work for the old podcast, and it was it was a little time consuming. It wasn't the end of the world. I wasn't doing the audio side. I was doing the video side, which we'd have for our YouTube channel, and it could get a little tedious. So it's like, I work the night shift and then I come home and it's like, oh no, now I got to edit this video before I go to bed and this whole thing. And, it could get a little annoying, but I do miss the camaraderie that we'd have on the old show, and how we'd kind of go back and forth. And it was a fun thing to look forward to each week. I miss that, but I need to just find, I guess, whatever will be the right fit. And I think I'm about the only person, that comes on the show that I don't have anything currently going, or I don't have like a major history in the industry. And I appreciate you having me on for that. I really do.
No, but it doesn't mean anything. You know your stuff.
Well,
you know your stuff. I know that you know your stuff. That's the most important thing.
I try to, but I kind of come on thinking like, does anybody really want to hear this guy? And there's people with different stories, or they've been in the industry, or they're like legendary, and but at the same time though, I appreciate you having me on, because at least I've done some stuff, like not a lot or anything, but I've done some stuff, and it's great to know that you at least can see that, and we struck up a friendship doing this and everything, and that's great. And that's all you can really hope for, right?
For now. Because I'm still predicting bigger things for you in the future.
And I appreciate that.
And all I know is that this whole experience and meeting people like you has been really a gratifying thing. It's been way more fun. Way more fun. I mean, I got together with Apter for the first time in years, Craig Peters for the first time, literally face to face, going out together. And if I ended this tomorrow, at least the podcast reopened the doors to a lot of my old friends. And I spoke with Stu Sachs and people that I really haven't seen in a long time. Some wrestlers said, "You're still around?" I said, "Yeah." In fact, I just booked my first 2 major wrestling stars to be on this show.
Oh,
yes. Because they remember me for the old day. But you know what it's been like, seriously? It's always my first question is, do you remember me? And they're like, yeah, I remember you. And it was like, I shouldn't be so sheepish. Just get in there and ask. You don't ask, you don't get. So I think we're going to have some very interesting guests this year, because I'm going to ask a little harder in year number 2. Like I said, I have a couple of major wrestlers that are coming on in the next couple of months. So, it's not easy. But I don't want to sound egotistical, but I think this is a very different wrestling podcast. There's something different about this show.
It is.
And I'm really proud of this. I really am.
Look at it this way.
I'm here from everybody else in the industry saying you're doing so great. We had a Zoom meeting. Oh, you were probably there.
I was there, yeah.
For our fan club members.
There you go.
And they said some things that knocked me out about me. They thought I should join one of the major podcast networks. That was their vibe. You really ought to be on a bigger network.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, that sounds good. Because maybe to take a little bit off my plate,
I would love to see that pushed.
Although I did have one offer. I had an offer recently, and I'm still mulling this. Now dig this. Starting the outdated brand in different genres.
Oh,
the outdated rock hour.
Yeah.
The outdated something else hour.
Huh.
Complete nostalgia in different genres.
I like it.
I liked it too, but the trouble is I don't have enough time to do this. How am I going to do another one? Or other ones,
Let's look at it this way. Your podcast, even though it says outdated, we did talk about some current stuff on here,
Sure.
but
Right, but
you have to think of it. We went with the outdated mindset where we looked at things a certain way. Maybe it could be like this way back in the day, or whatever. That's the beauty part. You're not saying I'm not allowing you to talk about anything pre or post 1992 or something. You're not saying that. It's just let's have our own slant on it of like-minded people, and that's what the podcast is. Let's delve into those old topics with the way it currently looks, and let's look at it with that mindset. Be open to new things, but let's try to really enjoy those things in the past.
you young punk! How
You
dare
young punk.
you? How dare you talk to me like that at my age? You what? You think I? No, I'm just joking.
Think you're better than me. Yeah.
Get off my lawn. My staff announcer, Bob, 20 minutes from now, and I call him
Yes.
Bob 20 minutes from now because that's going to be me 20 minutes from now. I'm going to be yelling for soup in a deli somewhere.
Yeah.
It's cold. I'm telling you, it's cold. That's going to be me any second now. And I have finally come to grips with the fact that people like the intros.
Yeah.
They really do. I had somebody write to me recently and said, keep it up with the old man. I laugh at the old man. And I had somebody in real life approach me and go, who's your staff announcer? I thought that was the greatest thing. I swear to God. I was like, I said, it's me. That's you? Yeah, it's me. Because you heard the early ones where I had conversations with myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
They bought it.
That's
Couldn't
crazy.
believe it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I know. It takes all kinds, right?
Takes all kinds. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen from Canada near Toronto, this is Liam Savage, a wrestling expert if I ever met one. Liam, thank you once again for being part of this silly little thing. And Happy New Year, man.
Happy New Year to you, and thank you very much for having me back on again. And it's always a pleasure.
It's not the last time if you'd like to come back,
Yeah, I think I'll come back.
Okay.
I'd like
You better. If you know what's
something
good
to
for
do,
Yeah. Yeah. Something to do.
Something to do.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Outdated Wrestling Hour. It's something to do.
Something to do.
See you later, kid.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So I hope you enjoyed that scintillating conversation. I certainly did. That's Liam Savage, everybody. I hope to have him back again real soon. I do like wrestling podcasts. We were talking about them before, and I recently found myself binging on a podcast called AWA Unleashed, dedicated to the entire history of the American Wrestling Association, and it's real good. It's got three guys who know their stuff for sure. Mick Karch, Chris Tubbs, and George Shire are on there a lot, and I'll tell you what, I've been really enjoying it. You need to check it out. I'm finding out it's available every place this podcast is available. So it's called AWA Unleashed. It's worth your time. Hold on a sec. That's our theme song. Performed by the guitarist extraordinaire Brian Teo. Thank you, Brian. Our Gmail. Get a hold of us about everything or anything. outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. Our website, Outdated Wrestling Hour. Buzzsprout. .com, where you can hear every single edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour with Bob Smith. Just hit a button. They're all there. You don't have to go searching around. Don't got to go through all the podcast apps, although we do hope you do listen to the podcast apps. They're very helpful, helping us get heard out there. Spotify and Google Podcasts and Deezer and you name it. We're all of them. We're also on YouTube. I keep forgetting to mention that. There is an audio version of the show on plain YouTube with our placard advertisement in the front. So you get to look at my hideous visage while you listen to us talk about wrestling. But in any event, we are on YouTube, just like Jim Cornette and a lot of other podcasters are. It's not audio video. It's just audio. So if you like to listen to them that way, do it that way. However you get a hold of us is fine. Also, outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com is where you can learn about the Outdated Wrestling Hour fan club, or for a nominal fee, you can help us perpetuate this craziness on a weekly basis, take part in Zoom-style meetings, Maybe even win a prize once in a while. Who knows? Myriad possibilities, my friend. Myriad. In any event, it's at Outdated Wrestling Hour at buzzsprout.com. Learn all about the Outdated Wrestling Hour fan club. It's fun, and we hope get to know you a little better. And by all means, write to us at outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. You got anything you want to talk about? Great place to get a hold of me. I'm also at Facebook, Bob Smith. You see me singing with BB King on my page. I've had like 3 different careers, all of them very satisfying. So, and this wrestling thing has just crept up on me again late in life, and I'm enjoying it. And I hope you're enjoying listening to the Outdated Wrestling Hour. We got some really great guests coming up. We got some wrestlers. We got some behind the scenes folks. We're here every week. We come out every Friday. I don't know what else to say, but thank you for listening. It means so much. I wish you all in this new year of 2024 peace and happiness, safety, everything you want out of life. We'll see you next time, and thanks again.